Hello demigods, monsters, and gods alike. This is the Olympus Report. The Riordanverse is so vast and spans over 20 books, with even more to come. And within those books, Rick likes to leave some Easter eggs. Here's all the Easter eggs I found in the Riordanverse. Up first, Rick likes to leave Easter eggs at the end of his books that hint at his next series. This has happened in Percy Jackson, The Heroes of Olympus, and The Trials of Apollo. First, in Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth, Percy fights Antoine, which is the son of Poseidon, and you guessed it, the son of Gaia, main antagonist in the Heroes of Olympus novels. Through this fight, we get just a quick look of what's to come. Now for the Heroes of Olympus. In the House of Hades, we once again get a hint at our future antagonists. When Jason is talking about the Roman Emperor Diocletian, Hazel mentions that in school at St. Agnes, she was taught about him, along with Caligula and Nero, as evil, malicious Roman emperors who slaughtered ruthlessly. As we know, Caligula and Nero are two of the three evil Roman emperors that Apollo has to deal with in the Trials of Apollo. At the end of said Trials of Apollo series, in the last book, The Tower of Nero, Will mentions to Apollo that a voice has been calling out for help to Nico. We now know this is Bob in Tartarus and will be the main plot of Rick's upcoming book, The Sun and the Star. Pretty clever, Rick. But besides just the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles, Rick hides Easter eggs throughout his other series as well. In the graphic novel for The Last Olympian, when the gang arrives at the Empire State Building, a security guard can be seen reading The Serpent's Shadow, which is of course part of the Kane Chronicles. This actually makes sense within the context of the universe, as Carter and Sadie Kane did publish their adventures. Now on the flip side, Percy Jackson is mentioned multiple times within the Kane Chronicles. In the Red Pyramid, Carter and Sadie Kane are taken to Brooklyn by Amos, and he mentions that they should avoid Manhattan as it has its own unique problems, and this is all said while looking at the Empire State Building. And I think we all know what those unique problems are. Later on in the same book, Thoth, the god of knowledge, mentions Hermes and states that he is nothing like himself. In the next book, The Throne of Fire, Carter is gazing out at Manhattan and swears he sees something that looks like a winged horse, but later decides that's impossible. Oh, Carter, you would think you would realize that at this point, nothing is impossible. In the same novel, Sadie will also run into a Roman ghost who mentions the Roman gods Jupiter, Pluto, and Vulcan. In the last book, The Serpent's Shadow, Lacey and Drew from Camp Half-Blood also attend Sadie's school, and Drew is just as obnoxious as she was in The Lost Hero. I have a feeling Sadie and Piper could bond over their dislike of Drew. At the end of the book, Sadie mentions that they're picking up unidentified magical energy coming from Long Island. Of course, Long Island is where Camp Half-Blood is. There's also some extra Easter eggs in the graphic novels for the Kane Chronicles, as in the epilogues, Sadie can be seen wearing a Camp Half-Blood t-shirt, and does this outfit for Carter look familiar? And then in The Throne of Fire, Carter pops up in a Camp Jupiter t-shirt. The Kane Chronicles are also mentioned within the Trials of Apollo. Apollo mentions Ra riding his sun boat across the sky. And in the Tower of Nero, when Apollo, Meg, Nico, and Will are at Rachel's house, she points out one of her neighbors and describes seeing penguins on the balcony. The neighbors she speaks of are, of course, the magicians of the 21st Gnome, and we all know how much Felix loves penguins. Now on to Magnus Chase. Magnus Chase is actually first referenced in The Blood of Olympus. Annabeth mentions that she has family in Boston who she hasn't seen in a very long time due to a family fight, but swears that if she makes it out of the events of the Heroes of Olympus alive, that she will get back in touch with them. And this, of course, means that Annabeth pops up in the Magnus Chase series from time to time and at least makes one appearance in every book. But we also get some other references as well. In The Sword of Summer, Magnus jokes about if Jack could turn into a pen, which Jack relays is stupid and turns into a pendant instead. But we all know of another sword that does turn into a pen. A sword that Jack actually ends up falling in love with in the Ship of the Dead. I stan Jack and Riptide. OTP for sure. And of course, Percy does accompany his sword and makes an appearance in the Ship of the Dead. Within the series, Annabeth and Magnus also exchange stories about Greek gods and Norse gods. Annabeth tells Magnus about a fallen god, Apollo, as well as the trouble they're having with some immortal Roman emperors, which is of course the plot of the Trials of Apollo, which happens at the same time as Magnus Chase. And since this is the case, Magnus Chase also gets referenced in the Trials of Apollo. In the Hidden Oracle, when Apollo goes to Percy's apartment, Percy mentions that Annabeth is in Boston for a family emergency. Apollo also mentions Sol, the North sun god, running from wolves across the sky. Kinda cool how Apollo, the sun god, mentions both the Norse sun god and the Egyptian sun god. And finally, Apollo mentions coming across a very hot god with a talking sword that won't shut up. This is, of course, Magnus's father, Frey, and Jack, the Sword of Summer. Rick Riordan is so clever, and I personally love how all his series are interconnected. Did you find any extra Easter eggs that I left out? Let me know down in the comments below. But for now, that's all I have for you in this video. So please, until next time, stay safe.